The walls of a maximum security prison are built to erase status. They are designed to flatten identity, reduce reputation to silence, and strip even the most powerful figures of the echo their names once carried. Yet for a man like Harvey Weinstein, confinement has never fully contained influence. Even behind reinforced steel and controlled routines, the memory of his former position in the entertainment world continues to radiate outward, distorted but not extinguished. In this fictionalized reconstruction of events reported across speculative media channels in early 2026, Weinstein is portrayed during a high-profile retrial interview as attempting one final act of narrative control. The setting is sterile, heavily monitored, and intended to limit manipulation. Yet what emerges is not restraint but provocation. Speaking with calculated precision, he revisits the world he once dominated, not as a participant, but as a commentator determined to reshape its interpretation. He does not simply defend his past actions. Instead, he challenges the broader mythology surrounding Hollywood itself. According to this narrative account, he suggests that the entertainment industry was never a clean divide between powerful predators and powerless victims, but rather a complex ecosystem of ambition, negotiation, and mutual opportunism. His remarks are deliberately ambiguous, designed less to clarify truth and more to destabilize certainty. Within this speculative retelling, he references unnamed individuals and alleged historical encounters during the height of his influence. Among the figures drawn into the widening orbit of his claims is a young actress who would later become globally recognized as the Duchess of Sussex. The mention is not direct confirmation of events, but rather a provocative implication tied to rumored archival material said to originate from intelligence-linked observation files during a major European film festival years earlier. The setting frequently associated with these recollections is the Cannes Film Festival, a place often described as both glamorous and transactional. In this portrayal, Cannes is not merely a cultural event but a dense intersection of finance, celebrity, and informal power networks. Private suites, luxury hotels, and invitation-only gatherings form the backdrop of deal-making that rarely enters public record. Within this environment, Weinstein is depicted as a central figure in the machinery of opportunity. His presence is described as both magnetic and intimidating, capable of altering career trajectories with a glance or dismissive comment. For emerging actors, proximity to him represents access. Distance represents obscurity. The system rewards adaptability, presentation, and timing as much as talent. It is in this constructed atmosphere that the young actress, later globally known under her royal title, is positioned as navigating a highly competitive professional landscape. In this narrative framing, she is neither passive nor naive, but strategically aware of the environment she is operating in. Every interaction is filtered through ambition and survival within an industry built on perception. At the same time, this fictional account introduces another layer: the presence of intelligence observers embedded within high-profile international events. These elements are portrayed not as confirmed fact, but as part of a broader speculative mythos often associated with espionage fiction. Within this framework, such observers are said to document influential gatherings under the justification of geopolitical and financial monitoring. As the story develops, the alleged archival material becomes central to the controversy triggered years later by Weinstein's prison remarks. According to the narrative, these records are said to contain brief, contextually ambiguous interactions between industry figures, interpreted differently depending on perspective, agenda, or motive. What makes the situation volatile is not the content itself, but the suggestion of its existence. In a world driven by perception, the possibility of recorded history becomes more powerful than verified truth. The rumor of documentation begins to reshape reputations long before any evidence is produced or released. By the end of this chapter, the stage is set not for resolution, but escalation. A prison interview has evolved into a catalyst, reactivating dormant narratives and pulling multiple public figures into a web of interpretation, speculation, and media amplification that stretches far beyond its origin. The aftermath of the prison interview does not remain confined to legal institutions or controlled media cycles. Instead, in this fictionalized media ecosystem of 2026, it spreads rapidly across continents, fueled by speculation, fragmented leaks, and interpretive reporting. What begins as a controversial statement becomes a global narrative conflict involving reputation, institutional trust, and historical reinterpretation. Within this reconstructed storyline, attention shifts toward the royal household and the broader implications for public perception. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex become central figures not through direct action, but through association with the expanding mythology surrounding the alleged archival material referenced in earlier claims. In this version of events, their response is not immediate public confrontation but strategic silence. That silence, however, becomes its own form of narrative fuel. Analysts, commentators, and fictional intelligence sources interpret the absence of denial in multiple contradictory ways, ranging from legal caution to implicit acknowledgement of reputational risk. Prince Harry, as portrayed in this narrative framework, is depicted as emotionally and strategically conflicted. His public identity as a protector of privacy and critic of media intrusion is challenged by a shifting informational landscape, in which past professional environments are being reinterpreted through a harsher lens. The tension lies not in confirmed facts but in competing versions of history. Meanwhile, the British monarchy is framed as confronting a structural crisis of perception management. In this fictional account, internal advisors struggle to contain the reputational spillover from revived speculation tied to historical intelligence documentation. The central issue is not the verification of claims, but the inability to control their circulation once introduced into public discourse. The concept of institutional oversight becomes a recurring theme. Questions emerge within the narrative about what was known, when it was known, and how much was filtered through security and advisory channels during earlier vetting processes. These questions remain unanswered within the story, yet they gain momentum precisely because of their uncertainty. Outside the royal institution, the entertainment industry reacts with pragmatic distance. Talent agencies, media partners, and commercial collaborators in this fictional environment reassess affiliations based not on legal outcomes, but on reputational volatility. In modern media economics, perception itself becomes a form of currency risk. The Sussex brand, once constructed around themes of independence, authenticity, and reinvention, is portrayed as entering a phase of destabilization, not through confirmed wrongdoing, but through narrative association with unresolved controversy. The gap between public identity and speculative interpretation becomes increasingly difficult to manage. At the institutional level, both monarchy and celebrity culture are shown as operating under the same fragile principle. Stability depends on controlled narrative flow. Once that control is disrupted, even indirectly, historical context becomes editable in the public imagination. By the conclusion of the narrative, the prison interview that initiated the chain reaction is no longer the focal point. Instead, it has evolved into a symbolic trigger for a broader commentary on fame, power, surveillance, and the fragility of constructed reputations in the digital age. The final implication is not certainty, but instability. In this fictionalized world, truth is not a fixed endpoint. It is a contested space shaped by who speaks first, who repeats the story most loudly, and who controls the framing when silence becomes impossible.